Kevin O'Connell has been incredibly pass-heavy as head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, but is it time for him to balance it out? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. My hashtag everydayers. I appreciate you all so very much, and you are getting your time's worth this week. Although today is the normal Twitter Tuesday, which I know you all love as well because you all send me questions all the time. So thank you for that. If you're new here, welcome to Twitter Tuesday. It gets weird. My name is Luke. I will be your host, shepherding you through the wild jungle of this. You can find this show wherever you find your favorite podcast. Just search out Locked On Vikings on any podcasting app, including YouTube or even Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app on your smart TVs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So it's Twitter Tuesday. I'm taking your questions. You can submit questions to me anytime. Just email me at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com or fill out the Google form in the show notes, or I'll put out a call usually on Monday. I put it out a little early this week because I'm out of town. The rest of this week is a series on the Vikings playbook. So enjoy that. Be excited for that. We did motions yesterday. We got play action, run game, pass game, all that good stuff. So today I'm answering your questions. The first one comes from Ed Helinsky, who asks, in your opinion, how much offensive balance will the Vikings have this season? So Ed's question went on to specify about like run and pass balance, right? Will it be more play action? Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to paraphrase a quote from Mike Leach, who got asked a similar question in an interview once. And he said, 50% run, 50% pass. I think that's 50% stupid, which I love that quote because that's not true balance. And his argument was a little rudimentary, but I think kind of says something where like, if you have a 50% run, that means your running back is getting the ball 50% of the time. And if you have 50% pass, that means that your four pass catchers, primary pass catchers, are getting the ball, what would that be, 12.5% of the time. That's not balanced. That's way more skewed in favor of the running back. So really, 80-20 would be true balance. And that's actually the run-pass ratio that I think a lot of analytics people have kind of ended up settling on. That's their recommendation. But if you're looking for balance, I would say don't necessarily look at frequency. I think frequency data, you got to be really careful with it. You have to adjust it for down and distance and game situation and the injury report and, the defense you're going up against. You might want to run more against this one or less against that one. And if you got 3 games in a row against really bad run defenses and your run ratio shoots up, and then everyone's like, why are they running so much? Well, because that was what they thought would work. So don't worry too much about balance, but Kevin O'Connell has been extraordinarily pass happy. And with a quarterback that I don't think he will trust as much as, veteran, locked in, steady Eddie Kirk Cousins. I shouldn't say steady Eddie. That's a bad way to describe Kirk Cousins, but Cousins knows what he's doing. Very reliably knows what he's doing. And now we've got Sam Darnold, who is newish to the Shanahan-McVay stuff. I mean, he was in San Francisco last year, but hey, he's new to your team. And a rookie. So maybe we will back off that a little bit, and we might not pass as much. But that also might mean we just use simpler passing concepts. You don't have to abandon it entirely. You maybe just stick to simpler parts of the playbook, and then, fill things out with a couple more runs. So maybe there will be more rushing. But that run game also has to be good. If you're getting 2 yards a carry, screw that. Let's pass 60 times a game. Getting 2 yards a carry ain't going to win you anything. So I think it needs to be situational. I think you need to be really flexible about that. And I don't think that balance is a good goal. Like, I know that a lot of people really want it to be nice. Oh, well, we got some run, some pass. The defense will never know what's coming. I think do what works. And if that means you're kind of min-maxing this a little bit sometimes, it's perfectly fine. But 50-50ing it or trying to find the right ratio, I think is a bit of a fool's errand, and you should let other stuff dictate those decisions. Skull Chester asks, what qualities do Grenard and Van Ginkel possess that will help Dallas Turner? I mean, experience. It's just that they're veterans, and so they can help him along in the just transitioning to the NFL part of it, and helping him with the Flores playbook. Van Ginkel's very familiar with that, and I think then just helping him out with his pass rush moves and stuff like that. But I think it's more of a veteran thing rather than this guy's got a spin move and he can teach Turner how to do the spin move. These guys don't specialize like that. And especially at edge rusher, you want a large repertoire. Season asks, what did Ed Ingram do to make him do better after the week 4 disaster? And do you share the opinion that he is a better NFL guard than Reisner? I don't remember the week 4 disaster. I do remember there being one play. Was that against Carolina last year? One play where he passed somebody off to nobody. I thought that was in the preseason, but I don't know. I'll take your word for it. Week 4 was a disaster. I don't think that if you have one bad game, you necessarily go back and like tear your entire technique and everything apart and like change stuff. I don't think that that's wise to do mid-season for a lot of the reasons we've been talking about with McCarthy, right? Like he's changing a lot of his mechanics. It's like kind of a long-term process. You don't exactly do that on the fly. You have a bad game, you shake it off and you try to go out and do better next time. You try to learn what you can from it, but I don't know if there's like he started doing his foot differently after that game and it changed everything. I think Ingram has slowly but surely improved by those games becoming fewer and further between. And one of the big things he's improved on since his rookie year where he struggled a lot is just like patience with his hands. He loved to flash his hands out. He wanted to try to be the first to strike every single time. In his first year, he really wanted the mean streak. He really wanted to, he would try too hard to finish guys off in college too. He would get his hands on you, and instead of just driving you out of the play, he wanted to push you to the ground because that's, he wanted to really like put you down. And then college level athletes would survive that. They'd regain their balance and then they'd be off the block and they'd still be able to make the play. He's getting a little bit more patient about that stuff. And then in pass pro, not needing to necessarily be the first one to strike and being willing to let that come to you or being willing to time that a little better so he doesn't give his hands up right away. Because if you get into pass rush and your hands are like out before the engagement, the pass rusher, think about the moves that pass rushers rehearse. A lot of them start with a chop or start with a swipe or some kind of a club or something like that. So if you give them something to aim at, they're just going to knock that hand out of the way and now you don't have it. You've got to keep it close to the vest, or better yet, maybe even flash it sometimes, try to draw that move out so that you can time it better. So I think just generally like hand timing maybe would be the category of thing that I think Ingram has improved on, but he's improved on that over the course of a couple of years. One bad game is part of the sample, but you shouldn't think of it as like an inflection point unless you like really hear that it was an inflection point, like from a reporter. Hiort asks, I had an argument on Reddit about this earlier, and I got downvoted, so I'd like your opinion. Okay, well, I think I see your problem. What would you rather have, Dallas Turner and JJ McCarthy or all the picks we traded to get them? I think the way to approach this question is by using like the value charts, because everything's probabilistic, right? If Dallas Turner is a bust, it's very clearly the second answer. If he is not a bust, it is very clearly take him, right? So he's probabilistic. He's Schrodinger's edge rusher, right? He's both good and bad at the same time. And how do we value that? And that's what the draft charts are like for. And the draft charts say that Kwesi overpaid. That not necessarily that, he should have not taken the deal, but that a reasonable negotiation would have had him paying less. Now there's a difference, I think, between saying that and then saying like, no, we should have just like stood pat at 11 and just like let JJ McCarthy fall, which risked not getting him. We now know that the Rams were trying to get up to draft him. Matthew Stafford's old, or to draft. I think they were trying to draft, maybe it was Byron Murphy or somebody like that. Or maybe it was I forget who they were trying to get, but they were trying to trade up. And the Vikings knew about that because the Rams called the Vikings trying to trade up to 11. So they knew the Rams were trying to get up. They did not know who for. So do you just risk that and not get the quarterback that you like? Because I don't think they were that big on Bo Nix. Or do you just give up the 4th and the 5th? Like it's risk management. And saying, would you rather have not taken the risk? It's like saying, so I didn't get in any car accidents last year. Would I have rather not paid my car insurance? Well, yeah, of course. But I can't really know that ahead of time, can I? So I don't think that that's a very productive question, which it makes sense because it was argued on Reddit and nothing gets done over there. I've got a bunch of other questions coming up on this Twitter Tuesday episode, so stick around. Today's Locked On Vikings episode is brought to you by BetterHelp, which is a place to start your online therapy journey. Getting into therapy can be a daunting thing, in part because you don't know who you're going to be paired up with and who you're going to be like maybe bearing your soul to. BetterHelp does a lot to try to match you up with somebody that they think will be right for you. But no pressure on this, because if they're wrong and they give you somebody you don't like, you can switch for no additional charge. And it's designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule and your schedule in particular, and what you're comfortable with. You want to do it over the phone or by video or whatever you like, and working around your schedule, because that's the other hard part about therapy is like, well, you can only meet on Fridays at 3 and I got work, and you don't have to deal with any of that with BetterHelp. So go give BetterHelp a try. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. When you're done here, go check out Locked On Minnesota Sports. Go to their YouTube page and a 24/7 streaming channel that is all things Minnesota sports. We're continuing on with this Twitter Tuesday episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. The next one comes from Alexander Anger, who asks, why have the Vikings been more active in UDFA signings since Kwesi has been here? This is a numbers game. I don't think it's necessarily like they value undrafted guys more or less. It's a numbers game. Kwesi has not traded down in day 3 nearly as aggressively as Rick always would. Rick was something of an idealist. He was a little bit of when it came to the draft, he loved everybody a little bit. And he would, outside of the very COVID-afflicted 2021 class, he really liked every draft. He would always come up to the podium and say, we really liked how deep this draft. We thought this draft was, 400 players. We had 250 draftable grades, and then, we had so many draftable players. We had, 50 first round grade. Like they really liked a lot of players. Maybe that's just the scout in him, right? So he always thought, especially in day 3, well, I've got, 30 fifth round grades up and we're in round 7. Yeah, I'll trade down and take 2 bites at this apple. And he would get more picks, right? And whole meme about him getting a whole bunch of 7th round picks. And that meant that he had fewer, he just drafted more players than Kwesi has. Way more players. Kwesi's traded away a bunch of these draft picks. So he didn't have as many roster holes to fill, so he wouldn't go as hard in undrafted free agency. Kwesi went into undrafted free agency needing like 17 more players to fill out the 90. And you're not going to do that with CFL players, right? Like you'll maybe grab 1 or 2, John Redmond, who came from the XFL. I don't think I've mentioned him yet on the podcast. Hello. Yeah. UFL alum, John Redmond, his Everyman series will come up someday soon. So they got 1, but like you don't want to have to like fill your roster with those guys. And I don't think it's really optimal to fill your roster with that many undrafted guys either. I think it's a downside of trading away all your draft picks, right? Is just the numbers game, just that bottom roster thing. Even if you feel like you got your money's worth, which, deal by deal, we can argue about that all day. But even if you give him that, it's still like the having to fill out the bottom of your roster with 1 million undrafted guys does kind of stink and lowers the level of competition across the board. So I don't really love that part of it. I don't think that's something you do on purpose. I think that's something you do because you made a different decision and now you have to. Jettis Agent asks, with Harrison Smith's playing time getting dialed back this year, what do you think his role will be? More of a hybrid linebacker than a safety. I don't think so. I think what you're going to do is, so Metellus does everything. So I think if you are going to give Harrison Smith like veteran plays off, you just move Metellus to the other safety role. And then kind of like continue from there. Maybe you get more Theo Jackson, might get an increased role and just 1-for-1 take over. And then you keep Josh Metellus in the Swiss Army knife role as a kind of safety 3. That's what I think you do. And hey, ideal world, Lewis Cine shows you something and you can get him in there too. But I don't think anybody's holding their breath anymore. Jack from St. Paul asks, how do we evaluate interior offensive and defensive line in camp? Like if Jerry Tillery is cooking Brandel, does that mean Brandel sucks or Tillery is good? Okay, great question. Thank you so much for asking this question. So for one, big grain of salt, right? We're talking about practice. what you're looking, if you see one rep, log it, tally it, and you're looking for a pattern, because they won't go up against the same guys over and over and over again, right? Like this will mix and match. So if Tillery is cooking everybody, he's cooking Brandel, and then he's cooking this guard, and he's cooking that guy, he's cooking Feeney, he's cooking everybody, then, whoa, hey, maybe he's taken some kind of step forward this year, and we can talk about that story. If Brandel's getting cooked by everybody, oh, whoa, we've got a problem here. Maybe Reisner should go in. And that becomes the story. And I think if you really know what you're looking at, you can just tell. I've watched film with coaches before, lower level coaches before, and you know, they'll see a receiver get wide open for a touchdown, and they can always say with the utmost confidence, wow, what a good route, or, oh my God, the corner totally messed up, right? Like if they really know what they're looking at, you can sort of tell, and then you can assign credit accordingly. And I think that's the sort of insight that you can never really measure and tally and put into a grade. And it's also the kind of insight that I'm trying to train my own brain to be able to do. I don't know. I think I'm many years away from being able to do that the way that, like, you know, true, like, experienced coaches can, but it's what we're all working on, right? 1% better every day. Joel Bid, just won Lombardi before I die. Joel Bid asks, if Vegas had odds on Darnold being re-signed for 2025 and you were mandated to bet your own money, what are the lowest odds where you would take the flyer? That's great. So what should the odds be on Sam Darnold being re-signed for 2025? I'm going to go with, like, I mean, it's not 50-50 or anything like that. My brain thinks in percentages. So I'm going to put, like, it's not zero for sure. Like, there's a world where he just, like, where what we saw in that one game he played in San Francisco where he played pretty well is, like, real. And he actually learned something, and he took a step forward in a way he never could with the Jets. And it was actually all an Adam Gase problem. So maybe that's the world, but I think the chances of that, we'll put it like 5%, which would mean 20-1. So that would be like plus 2,000. Sound good? Yeah, it sounds good to me. Plus 2,000, I'll take it. Bad Dad Joke asks, Corey Davis, free agent formerly of the Jets, announced he's ready to return to football after a brief hiatus. Bigger bodied guy that has shown big playability, so it seems like he could be a good fit. What are your thoughts on bringing him in for some competition for the wide receiver 3 position? Look, man, I'm never going to say no. But that you're not bringing a guy out of retirement, especially a guy that was like a big time bust. I mean, that guy busted out hard for the Titans, and then had like 2 seconds with the Jets, and then it didn't work out. Right? Is that how that worked out? Yeah, I'm not putting any expectations on him. I'll put it this way: anybody can come play, but I'm probably as excited about him as I am for somebody from like the UFL. Let's see if he makes the team. Would have no expectation of him having any influence on the wide receiver 3 battle. Rohan Koo asks, would you take Dalvin back to be running back 3/mentor? No, I don't think so. I think that guy is pretty cooked. I think he's fallen off the bone. He's so cooked. He's so cooked. It's like, you ever see those videos with when a pit master like pulls the brisket out and then they don't even like tear it, they just like squeeze it and it just falls apart, and then they just like reach into the meat and they pull out like a perfectly clean bone and they put it aside and it's the greatest looking thing. He's like kind of that cooked. He's like cooked enough where like Gordon Ramsay would tell you got to refire that one. He's that cooked. I've got a bunch of unserious questions to go with my unserious answers coming up next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's number one sportsbook for a reason, whether you're betting on basketball or women's basketball or baseball, or whether you're just laying down something on like an NFL future, Vikings over under 7.5 wins. If you want to gamble on any of that stuff, check out FanDuel.com/lockedon and check back frequently, because right now FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of, among other things, Major League Baseball. Next question here on Twitter Tuesday on the Locked On Vikings podcast comes from Josh, who asks, how do you think you'll do the debate episodes? How often and what changes do you think you'll make? A lot of people seem to really like that, so I don't know. I kind of ran out of ideas on Friday, and it was like everybody was talking about the presidential debate, and I was like, what if I did like a debate thing? And I did a similar one for Arif Hassan's website, Wide Left. And he has his own Arif Debates Arif bit. That's a different thing. But I actually did one that was ZD Debates Zoe. And it was the exact same format, but it was an article, so I could pretend like it was ZD and Zoe talking to each other. And I was like, maybe I could do that same kind of writing style, but I'll podcast it. So I just did some like bulleted lists and stuff. And people seem to really, really like that. So I guess to answer, how will I do them? When I feel like it, I'll do whatever I feel like when I feel like it. That's the glory of having your own show. You can just kind of do that. So if I feel like there's an issue, like I think the niche that it fills for me is if there's an issue that I feel like truly torn, or that there's like truly both sides of an argument on, the argument whether or not to pay Kirk Cousins. Look, I get what people are saying, right? And I get why people would want to repay him. I personally fall on the side of not doing it, but I fully understand both sides of that debate. And that, there's good points on both sides. And if I feel that way, maybe I'll do it that way. How often? Again, when I feel like it. And what changes do you think you'll make? So one of the things that a lot of audio listeners struggled, I think, to like differentiate who was talking at a given time. If you watched on YouTube, I actually like changed shirts to say the different points. So like at least there was some kind of visual cue. I couldn't really figure out how to do it from audio, but I did get a good suggestion from someone who is otherwise just a little scamp named Kurt, who said maybe to pan a little bit to one side or the other. So you'd like hear like the positive one a little bit on the left, a little bit on the right. Not so much where you get like a headache out of it, but just enough to signal you maybe that's something to try. I don't know. That's the kind of thing I'm going to play with, is trying to make that clearer for like audio listeners. Anyways, Stezo asks, if you could have sent down 3 Vikings to the XFL for experience, a bit like baseball sending to the AAA, who would you have sent? I mean, we're talking like young players who aren't putting it together, right? I think the easiest answer here would be Andre Carter, right? Who's just clearly not ready to play football. Also the tense here, you said if you could have done it. So I think you're talking about like before last year. So I'm imagining like I would have loved to put like Seen Booth Asamoah, but I don't think I get to say Asamoah because he was playing really well in camp. So you kind of thought you were going to get something out of him and you wouldn't have sent him down. But Seen and Booth would probably be the other ones. And then Andre Carter to get a little bit of experience while he worked on his body and stuff in a low stakes environment. And I really would love it if that actually happened. If we could someday get to a world where the UFL could be the minors for the NFL, where younger players could get some experience, they'd be playing more, they'd be getting extra bruises, and the real hurdle here would be the pay of all of that. Like the UFL just cannot pay what the NFLPA would want you to play, so they would never say yes to it. But if you could find a way to overcome that hurdle, either by just ponying up or finding a different way to do it, some eligibility or something, or mandatory rest periods or something, if you could find a way to deal with that, I think that would be really cool. Luke Fraud VFL asks, do you think Harrison Smith is a Nickelback kind of guy? I'm like pretty sure he's a country kind of guy, like a big country guy, and Nickelback is fairly country adjacent in their sound and their format. Like if you heard a country cover of a Nickelback song, like how different would it? It wouldn't change that much. So probably. Shadow Flame asks, let's say a hypothetical mad scientist grants you with powers, making you as strong as the strongest person in the world while keeping your body type and shape. Do you think you could play at any position in the NFL? And if so, which one? So if I'm the strongest person in the world, so we're talking super strength, right? This is I was just watching The Boys. This is compound V that I'm getting, and I get super strength. Then I'm a nose tackle. Because my frame itself has nothing to do with it. When you talk about frame as like an evaluative thing, you're talking about it as their potential to gain muscle, i.e. their potential to gain strength. But if I can just have strength, it doesn't matter how physically large the body actually is. If I can generate the power I need to generate. That's why we care about the physical size. And if anything, being a smaller body at that point if I don't lose any power from being smaller, would be better because then I'm a smaller target. It's harder to get your hands on me. I'll have an easier time getting skinny through doubles and stuff. So yeah, be a very good nose tackle. This is essentially identical to the like, where would you put a silverback gorilla question? Nose tackle and fullback. That's always is what the answer should be. And if I have superpowers there, yeah, I'll just blow up every center and it won't matter at all that I'm a leaner framed guy. But I promise you, now that my wedding's over, I'm working on it. Love Randy's Donuts. Zin Diesel asks, final question I'm going to do today, which is you get to choose one coach or player in Vikings history to replace Leonidas at the Battle of Thermopylae. Who is it and why? I think I know what movie you watched this weekend. So the answer, so here's the thing about Thermopylae, right? We're not talking about the movie 300, which was a triumphant victory. That was fictional. At the Battle of Thermopylae, King Leonidas and all of the men that stayed with him died. Essentially what happened is they got encircled. They had their choke point, which is the famous thing in the movie. All numbers will count for nothing. And yeah, they inflicted insane casualties on the Persian army. And, every man that went down took 10 men with them. Like, it was crazy. But then they eventually got encircled and the Persians got, or the Persians were on their way to essentially cutting them off the other way, and they would have been decimated from there. So what Leonidas essentially did was say, we're going to keep this position. You go escape while you can, and we're going to basically cut them off here. And King Leonidas and the men that stayed with him, which were like the Spartans, said, go save yourselves. And it was more like 3,000 than 300. And it wasn't just Spartans. It was, it was Athenians, it was Thebians. It was all, a whole amalgamation of like kind of this ragtag force that was supposed to be part of this part of the Peloponnesian War. That is to say, if I were to actually send them back to the historical Battle of Thermopylae, I'm sending them into ancient Sparta, which, while as grading on a curve as far as ancient cities goes, it was still an ancient lifestyle. So if I'm taking an NFL player in modern times that's used to running water and hot meals and sending them back to, ancient Greece, that's not going to be very fun. And then here's the other thing about ancient Sparta. It's going to be really gay. There's going to be a lot of dudes on dudes. All right. So that's going to be something. And you're also definitely going to die. So who do I want to send back to a very uncomfortable environment where they're probably going to get sodomized and then die? Easy Darren Sharper. Slamming Darren Sharper there. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. I will talk to you all tomorrow. We're doing the run game tomorrow, so get excited for that. And as always, Skol.